Hello, I just want to start off by saying that I was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma way back in 2009. So I'm going to attempt to summarise the last 13 years in roughly 13 minutes. I'm now 33 and I will try my best, and also my name's Matt. So my journey from symptoms to remission lasted roughly a year. Everyone always asks, how did I find it and what were the signs? Well, similar to what I've heard before, there weren't really any signs until there was one fateful football match that saved my life. A bad tackle that I initially thought had caused an ankle break, and it obviously annoyed me, led to an x-ray, which then led to an MRI scan, which then led to a biopsy, which led to my diagnosis on May the 6th, 2009. I do want to say I was initially discharged with a sprained ankle, and then it was actually the consultant that reviewed all of the x-rays that called me back and said that I needed to go for an MRI. My reaction at first was nothing really. I was numb, so probably more in shock. My dad, who was with me, much the same. My mum was away in the Maldives with my stepdad, and he'd just been diagnosed with prostate cancer 2 weeks previous to my diagnosis. And then I called my sister, and that's when the tears started. Having to say the words, I have cancer at 20, didn't seem right, and it didn't seem fair. I was scared, and at this point, I wondered if I would die. A week or so later, I travelled to St James's in Leeds, and I met Ian Lewis and his team. And Ian Lewis is the man that saved my life. To me, he's a hero, he's a brilliant man. And after my first meeting with him, I felt assured that I was in the right place to begin this fight. And it was here I thought, well, this isn't going to beat me, and I'm going to do everything in my power to beat this. After my diagnosis, there was the brilliant news that the cancer hadn't spread, so it was just localised in my fibular bone in my right leg, and I started with VIDE chemotherapy, so I had 6 cycles of that. Most people in the room have either experienced chemotherapy firsthand or have witnessed somebody else experience it and know the side effects. The hair loss, the throat like laser braids, lack of immune system, the constant extreme fatigue. And everyone has different ways of coping. At this point, mine was a simple one. After the first chemotherapy, the tumour was clearly shrinking because the night pain disappeared, and you could physically see that my ankle was getting back to more of a normal size, so I was staying positive. The chemo was awful and it was horrendous, but because I was getting better, I was coping with it. And then also, my friends organised a charity football match, and this was the birth of my cancer charity work and my team, Matt's Legends, and we will come back to that later. I then had a decision to make regarding surgery, and there was a couple of surgical options. There was the limb-saving option, which involved quite a complicated procedure because of how far down my fibular bone that the tumour was, so it wouldn't have left any of the fibula, so I would have had an unstable ankle. They could have taken some fibular bone from my left side and put it into the right side. They could have fused my ankle, but they said my mobility would be quite poor, and eventually, maybe after 10 years, it could lead to an amputation anyway. So after discussing this, we decided that we would go with the amputation because it would leave good clearance from the tumour, and the Rob Grimer from Birmingham said that I would have better mobility. And then this was in October 2009, and I still remember that day since it was yesterday. I stayed up most of the night before my operation, just walking up and down the room mainly, wondering how would I cope with the physio to get me mobile again, whilst then restarting chemotherapy once I'd recovered from the surgery. Looking back now, the way I just pushed on and didn't really talk or think about my amputation is the reason that I've had mental health problems, which again I'll come to later on. Once I left the hospital, and after about a week, after a week I had the dreaded wait to see how much the tumour had died when they removed it, and this was really good news. It was a good prognosis. It was 98% dead, So this meant I carried on with my original treatment plan and had 8 more cycles of via chemotherapy. I knew I was over the hill, but the final 3 to 4 cycles of chemo were the worst ones for me. It was a sickness. I was sick every single time I was in hospital, to the point where I couldn't stop being sick, and we tried lots of different anti-sickness drugs, but the best one for me was Nosinan, because it essentially just knocked me out while I was having chemotherapy, so I just slept through it. And then in April 2010, that's when I entered remission. So this slide here just shows those 2 years. So, sorry, I've got muddled up here. Have I lost a page? Have I left a page over there? No, just found it. Sorry, nerves. So previously, I had tried to talk about each year at a time when I've done these talks before, but now we're 13 years down the line, that's going to be pretty hard to do. So I've tried to condense it a bit. So this is 2010 to 2012, which was quite a mixed time in my life. I ran the Hull 10K, which was 6 weeks after my chemotherapy. Well, I say ran, that looks like I ran it. That's about the last 50 yards. I walked most of it, but that's quite an impressive photo to show that it looks like I'm running it. And the actual, that's just water, it's not sweat. It just looks like it's sweat. And then that raised money for the Teenage Cancer Trust. And then the first year, I say I was on a massive high. I thought I was on a massive high. I think I was just happy that I'd beaten cancer. I got to go back to uni, and I essentially made my 3rd year of uni like my 1st year of uni. So I suppressed everything and just thought about passing my degree, seeing my friends, did the usual things that you do at uni, drank a little bit too much. But looking back now, this was probably the first signs of me trying to block out any feelings about what had happened to me the previous year. And again, I'll come to that later. I passed uni with a 2-1 degree, felt brilliant about that. And then when I finished university, I volunteered at 2 schools, and I had a plan to apply for teacher training to begin in September 2012. The time between uni ending and teacher training starting was tough. I lost someone I met at the Finding Sense of Humour conference to cancer, and then my stepdad, who I mentioned earlier, had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. We lost him as well. And the emotions, again, I pushed them all back, and I kept positive. There was good news though, and as I successfully applied to start teacher training and began in September 2012. And another major thing that happened in that time period, which is probably one of my proudest moments, is I got to carry the London 2012 Olympic torch, and I also got to carry the Paralympic flame as well. So I got to do both, which is, I think, quite rare, which I'm really proud of. Unbeknown to me, when I started my new job at a primary school, ready for teacher training, I was introduced to the staff, and one of them is sitting here at the back now. I met the love of my life there. So it was truly fate, because pre-cancer, I wasn't thinking about becoming a teacher. I was going to become a police officer, and then life plans changed. And now something that I haven't mentioned yet is, well, I really love football. I love sport, anything sport really. And I miss playing football so much that I needed to get back into some sort of competitive sport. So in 2011, I began playing para ice hockey, which is essentially ice hockey in sledges. And I was playing for the Kingston Kestrels, who were based in Hull. If we fast forward a bit, I then started training with the GB team in 2012. I was chosen to play for GB, and this again, I would have never played football for England, ever. I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't have even played for a decent Saturday team. And this got me travelling the world. I went to Russia in my first tournament. I then played in 2 other major tournaments in 2013. I went to Japan, Italy, Sweden. And so this period saw me focusing on A, my career, and B, playing para hockey. And the sport was doing me the world of good as well, because it helped my mental health, because I was the fittest I'd probably ever been, even pre-cancer, and I was doing something I loved doing. And it was actually then took me from meeting Faye in September 2012 till August 2014. So you're talking nearly 2 years here for me to actually ask her to be my girlfriend. So it took a long time for me to, as Faye will probably mention, to grow up a bit. And then, and then this is when our relationship officially began, and the rest of 2014 was spent with our relationship building and beginning our life together. Then we continued to build our relationship. I moved in the Easter of 2015. And then on her birthday that year, I actually proposed and we started planning our wedding together. The big day came on the 11th of August 2016, which was the happiest day of my life. And following that, we went on a honeymoon to Thailand and Vietnam, which again is something I probably wouldn't have thought of doing, and something Faye was wondering how I'd cope, because I've been very used to holidays where I know where the hotel is, I know how I'm getting there, and this was really out of my comfort zone. But I absolutely loved it, and it's the best holiday that I've ever been on, and it made me fall in love with travelling. Then things started to take a bit of a turn, and this, I think, is something that isn't talked about enough by, not just in our community, but in community in general, and it's getting better, but it's mental health. So 2017 and 2018 were very tough years for me personally, and for us as a couple. My mental health was getting affected, and my moods were very either hyper positive or really down. So I was quite short-tempered, not a nice person to live with, and wondered why this was happening. And looking back, it's definitely the long-term effects of cancer creeping up. And the main one that messed with my head was infertility was confirmed. And I've always wanted children, and we were planning to start a family as well. So even though I'd survived cancer, and I had friends who I'd sadly lost to cancer, and I felt a bit guilty for feeling these feelings, I couldn't help feeling them. And I felt a failure, if I'm honest, that I couldn't help with conception naturally. I had frozen some samples, so we sought help. I began counselling to help my depression, and this put me in a better place, and we began IVF treatment. However, this was a complete disaster, to be honest. We had 2 failed attempts on the NHS, followed by a final failed attempt privately that my parents kindly helped fund. And this did ruin me, and I gave up and thought, why do I bother with the positive attitude on the outside in public when things keep going wrong? And this is the hard bit to say. This is when I actually felt a bit suicidal, and with Faye's support though, and the oncology psychologist in Hull, I slowly began to rebuild my mental health. And once I was in a better place, we still wanted to look at the family option, so we decided to become adopters, and that's when we began our journey into the adoption process. But when you've just recovered from your mental health, that is very mentally challenging, because they ask you everything, every little detail of your life, your finances, your romantic, your family history, they go everything, there's no stone unturned. But we wanted children, so we continued. And then this brings me to 2019, and obviously the start of the pandemic. So in 2019, we were approved as adopters. We had lots and lots of training on various things, how to parent, specifically how to parent children that are being adopted or fostered, and started with the process of where you have to be matched with a child, which is quite complicated. And we wanted an infant as well, which is harder to match as well. And first it was very slow. There were no leads on matching us with the right child. And then this changed. And December 2019, so just before obviously the pandemic started, I was actually travelling to my dad's, and we were told, go enjoy Christmas. We'll catch up in the new year. There won't be any matches till after Christmas. So we thought, okay, brilliant. We'll enjoy our last Christmas before we've got a child. However, when we were travelling to my dad's, not even a week later, I think it was even a few days later, we got a call from our social worker who said, there's a baby come up. It's been given up in hospital, and that is even rarer to adopt a child that's been given up, and that comes with its own complications. Would we be interested? It would need to be a very quick decision. So we thought over as quickly as we could and went, well, yes, we would. And because it was a given up child, we had to foster her at first, and the aim is to adopt. And 5 days after that phone call, we brought our little, at this point, nameless baby, because she'd not been given a name. We weren't allowed to name her, and even if the birth mother didn't name her, we still might not be able to name her. It might be the social worker that gets to name her, so we called her Little Lamb at this point. And then this little angel, which you can see there, was named Gracie. So Gracie May, and we've obviously fell in love with her, but there was months of worry at this point as well, because at first we wasn't sure if the adoption would go through, because was birth mum going to challenge it, but she didn't, and I can proudly say that Gracie is a Woollias now, and she's ours forever now, so that's really good. And also, when we did get her, she had a hemangioma, and it was quite a, if you can see, it was quite a profound hemangioma, and she had to have like a beta blocker medication every day for a year to reduce that. And I mean, you can see there's a bit of a birthmark now, but that's completely gone. So we had that to contend with as well, because we had to medicate her every day. So there was a lot to do for Gracie, but she is the best thing that's happened to me in Faye. But then Faye was looking forward to her maternity. We get to March, and it's spent in lockdown, and we are super proud parents of her. She's bubbly, she's an amazing little girl. She's 3 in November, but she is coming with difficulties. She's autistic, non-verbal, and she struggles to process her senses properly. And we're at the very early stages of getting this diagnosed, getting the right support. Luckily, we are both teachers, so we did spot the signs as early as possible. But like anything, there's waiting lists for everything, and trying to get the support, you do have to push and push, but because we are pushing, we're getting that support for her. And this has been another battle for me mentally. I mean, Faye has been amazing with that side of things with Gracie, but it has tested my mental resilience again. And I have recently, over the last few months, relapsed again with my mental health. And I had quite a massive setback over the summer holidays when you're off school with the school holidays. And I didn't really want to be off work, which is a bit of a sad thing to say when I've got 6 weeks to spend with my family. But it was just the way I was feeling. So, but I think it's linked to, it's talk a lot about PTSD with things like soldiers in the military. But I think as cancer patients, we do suffer PTSD, like the cancer survivors, and our experiences, it does cause these emotions that sometimes we can't help. And I've started my counselling again, and the last 2 months I've started to feel a lot better, and I'm trying to be more mindful of any triggers that before the triggers cause me to have a complete mental health like sort of issue where it causes issues for Faye and me and my family and my friends. So that's something I'm still working on, but I am feeling a lot more positive the last couple of months. I did want to end on a positive, so this is my recent project. So this is a charity football team that specifically raises money for bone cancer research. I sort of relaunched it after the pandemic last August 2021, and it's snowballed out of nowhere. I was just going to play a one-off game, and somehow we're now fully affiliated with the FA. We not only play like friendlies or charity matches, we're in a league now, we're also part of in the East Riding FA. There's going to be the whole charity football league that I'm the league secretary of, because I can't say no, which is starting next year. But this team has massively helped me over the last few months because it's gave me a focus. The players all pay fees, and 90% of those fees go to bone cancer research, with a small percentage helping run the club. And I think in the last 14 months, we've raised £6,000 for the charity as part of that. And we're always open to offers for matches. We're trying to play a bit further afield now. So if anybody knows anybody that runs charity teams or any teams that want a game to raise money for bone cancer, it's a really good way to raise money if you can get a ground that sells beer, because then people start donating more. But on that note, thank you for listening, and I hope my talk has given an insight into the long-term survivors' experiences. Thank you.